Today's Daf Yomi Baruch Hashem is Zevachim Peites Zevachim 89. Says we're going to start a new chapter called Kol HaTadir Mechavero Kodem Es Chavero, whichever comes more frequently than its colleague. Here we're talking about the rituals, specifically about the karbanos, but also mitzvahs in general. Anything that comes more frequently comes before its friend. Tamidin, so therefore the daily tamid, the daily offering, Kol Milam Musafin, comes before the carbon musaf. Musaf Shabbos, the additional offering on Shabbos, Kol Milam Musaf Rosh Chodesh, comes before the musaf of Rosh Chodesh. Shabbos every week, Rosh Chodesh once a month. Musaf Rosh Chodesh, Kol Milam Musaf Rosh Hashanah, that comes before the musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Shenamar, because it states about by the karbanos of Pesach that you bring these offerings, Milvado Lasa Boker, Asher Lo Lasa Tamid, Testu Asila, aside from the morning offering, the Olas HaBoker, that is the Olas HaTamid. It means to say, from the fact that it says Asher Olas HaTamid, that teaches us that it was already brought. Mavad Olas HaBoker, that it was already brought. So we see that the Tamid comes first, then you should, and afterwards you do the special offering, Testu Asila. So the Gemara says, Manoah, and how do we know that whatever comes more frequently comes prior to the one that comes less frequently? Gemara says, what do you mean Manoah? We just cited the pasuk, Mavada Lasa Boker. The Gemara says, no, but maybe Dilma Tamidin Hain the Cardinal Musafim. Maybe that's only teaching us that the Tamid comes before the Musaf, Mishum Nitadiri Musafin, because Mishum Nitadiri, because it's more common. Musafin, how do we know that a Karma Musaf comes before or another musaf if it's more common, like the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh. We know. So Amar Rabbi Eli to Amar Kra Ka'ila Tasu Ayom Shavas Yamim. It says in the next pasuk, it says after it discusses the karbanos, that pasuk we just said, and like this you shall do for all 7 days. So it means to say Ela Ka'ela, meaning to say that the remaining offerings have the same halacha. Now we follow the Tadir, whatever's more frequent comes first, and so therefore the Karma Musaf of Shabbos will come before Rosh Chodesh. Mar says, "Vami Bailo Gufa." No, don't we need that to teach us that we have to bring these same karbanos every single day of the Yantif? No, Imkein Nechtov Ella. Why does it Ella Tasu? Ella Tasu Ayom. So it should have just written Ella Tasu Ayom and not Ka Ela. So Mar says, no, Iksiv Ella Tasu Ayom. I might have thought if it was written Tasu Yom Shavas Yamim, Havamina Elo Shavas Yamim, that you just have to bring these karbanos completely over 7 days. I wouldn't have known that you have to do each day. So therefore you need Ka'ela to teach us that. Gemara says Vakati Ema Elo Layom. Still it could have said Elo Layom. Avashar Yomei Lo Yadana Kama. So the Gemara says. So I skipped this. I skipped this sentence. So the Gemara says no. Hayom Ksiv. We would have known this idea El Hayom Ksiv because it says that you have to do it on the first day, and then it says 7 days. So it means to say that you should do it on this day and also on the other days. The Gemara says, "Vakati ema elayom avashar yom elo." Yadana kama. Maybe it says. Maybe I would have thought it would do like this on this day, but the other days I wouldn't know how many to bring. So Amakra ta'asu. So the pasuk says ta'asu to teach us. So it says you should do the same thing on every single day. So the chaf is extra to teach us this idea. You call asios shavos. So the word tasu teaches us that all the days are the same offering. So the ka is to teach us that the karban musaf that's more common comes before the karban musaf that's less common. Abai says no. We can learn out from the pasuk itself. Migufa dekra because imkain leimakra mavada loasaboker v'tishtok. We could have learned it out from the fact that it says mavada loasaboker because that's how we learned whatever was brought came first, i.e. the morning olah. But so because it's more common. Asher Lasa Tamid Lamli. Why did it say the concluding phrase Asher Lasa Tamid Lamemar the Hafta Tadira Tikdom? It's to teach us the one that's more common, i.e., whatever is more common than the other one, the Musaf also Tikdom comes before the Musaf that's less common. Now we're up to the next Mishnah. Whatever is more sacred than its colleague comes before its other colleague. What does this mean? The blood of the chatas comes prior to the blood of the oah being sprinkled. Why? Rashi says if both of them are slaughtered and waiting to be sprinkled, the blood of the chatas comes before the oah. Because the blood of the chatas atones, and something that atones comes first. The limbs of the oah come prior to the emurim. The emurim are the parts that are going up on the altar. So the limbs of the oah go prior to the limbs of the parts of the chatas, the sacrificial parts of chatas. Because those are entirely burnt. The oah is entirely burnt. No, it's holier. Chatas kodemes la'asham. The korban chatas comes before the asham. Nesha dama nitan l'dalei kronos. So the korban chatas, presumably from our missions, every part of the chatas comes before every part of the asham, because the chatas, the blood is applied to all four corners, and also ala yesod, dama nitan l'dalei kronos, and also ala yesod. The ala yesod, as we amend the text following the text of Rashi. Asham kodem l'toda. The korban asham comes before, whereas the asham, by the way, was just two matanos, which are four, not on the corners of the altar. The asham comes before the toda. The El Nazir, Mimnei Shu Kachi Kachim. Now Asham is Kachi Kachim, and the Toda of El Nazir are Kachim Kalim. Toda of El Nazir Kodem L'Shlamim. The Toda of El Nazir come before the Shlamim. They Shehein Nechol Yom Echad, because they are eaten for one day only. V'Tu'unin Lechem, and they require bread. The El Nazir requires two types of bread, and the Toda four types. Shlamim Kodmin. The shlamim come before the bechor. They require four applications of blood, two that are four, and the bechor only requires one matana, as we learned earlier in our tractate back on Daf Nun Vav Amud Beis. And they also require smichon istacham l'tunufas chaz v'shok. The shlamim also requires these other additional elements. The bechor kodem l'maiser. The bechor comes before the maiser. Mimnei shekadusha some meirachem. The maiser is the 10th animal, and the bechor is holiness comes from its womb. V'nechol l'kohanim, and also the bechor is only eaten by the kohanim. A maiser kodem la'ofos. The maiser behema, the 10th animal that comes through the pen, that comes before the bird offering, because it's an animal offering. The Hbo kachim, and also it has within it kachim, meaning to say it has certain parts of it that go up to the altar. It has two things: its blood and its imurav. Whereas the chatas ha'of, the only thing that goes on the altar is its blood. And so, since the comes before the chatas ha'of, for sure it comes before the oas ha'of, because the chatas ha'of comes before the OSO, as we're about to explain. And it's a little bit interesting logic, because the OSO does go on the altar, whereas the chatasov, only the blood goes on the altar. But the chatasov comes before the OSO, so then for sure the meiser has to come before the oah, even though the oah, this kal chomer wouldn't work on the oah. The ophos come before the grain offerings, because they have blood within them that are, so therefore they have more kapara, Rashi says, and more of an atonement. Minchas chote kodem u'minchas l'dava. The mincha of the sinner, i.e. the sota's offering, comes before the mincha of the nedava, the voluntary mincha. Why? I mean, they should because it comes for a sin. And so therefore that's its holiness, that it provides atonement, so it's considered to be more holy. The chatas ha'of kodemes la'oas ha'of, v'chein be'ektisha. Chatas ha'of comes before the oas ha'of. The Gemara is going to learn this out from a pasuk. And also, when you sanctify it, when a woman takes the pair of birds and says, One is for a chatas, and then the other one is ola. She has to do kriya shem. You have to do the kriya shem on the chatas before the ola. So I guess the Kohen who separates it has to do that, or the woman who designates it. So it says the Gemara on the top of Peites, Amud Beis, Minani Mili. What's the source of the idea that the dam of the chatas, Rashi says, comes before the dam of the ola? Whereas the ivarim of the ola come before the emurim of the chatas. What's the source for this idea? The Tana Rabbanan. We're going to sin a braysa. It says by the Torah reading for Hanukkah that when not just before the Torah reading for Hanukkah, that when the Leviim are sanctifying the Mishkan, excuse me, it says they take a bowl, and then they take a par sheni ben bakar tikacha chatas. You take a par for the ola and a second par for the chatas. Par sheni ben bakar tikacha chatas. So what's it coming to teach us? If it's coming to teach us, that there are two bowls that are being brought, it already says, so it can't be this to teach us that there are two. So if that's the case, that's why does it say the second bowl you should take for chatas? I might have thought that the chatas comes before the ola. To tell us that the ola comes first. Well, Gemara says 1 second. The parasheni, I might have thought if the chatas is second, I might have thought that the ola always comes first before the chatas. You have to do one for the chatas, one for the ola. Okay, it said dam chatas kodem ledam ola. So the blood of the chatas, if they're both standing there, the blood of the chatas is sprinkled first because it provides atonement, so therefore it's holier. Whereas the very ola, the limbs of the ola come before the emurim of the chatas. The Gemara says, "V'amai, v'amai." But why should all the blood of the chatas come before all the blood of the ola? Matana kamaisa de mechapra tikdom. But the first blood of the chatas, which is the one that provides the atonement, Rashi says the chatas mechapra, v'shoma kapara bedida. That's the one that provides the complete atonement. Even though you only do one, it provides atonement. So once you do the first one, that should provide the atonement. And then the remaining ones, you should put the ola first. Here we're referring to the chatas of the Levites that we're talking about, where they didn't really sin. The avagavdiki oadami, meaning to say the Levites didn't really sin. So even though it's like an ola because it wasn't being brought for a sin, nevertheless it comes before the ola because it's called a chatas. And so therefore the other three, even though they're not providing atonement, the other three applications on the corners, even though they're not providing atonement, they're called a chatas. So they come first. He ticked them. The Marava, in Eretz Yisrael, they give a different answer. All the history of Matanos going on. Once you start with it, you finish. You start with the applications on the corner, so you finish it. In Bailu, Dam Chatas, they vare Ola, Ezemen Kodem. Okay, so we said that the blood of the Chatas comes before the blood of the Ola, and the limbs of the Ola come before the Emurim of the Chatas. So now let's see if the blood of the Chatas and the limbs of the Ola, which is a very real possibility. So which one comes first? Ezemen Kodem. Do we say Dam Chatas Kodem and Nation Maratza? Do we say the blood of the Chatas comes first because it provides atonement? Or Dilma Vari Ola Kodem, maybe the limbs of the Ola come first. Nation Ko Ishin because they're entirely burned. The Gemara says, Tashma, Dam Chatas, Kodam, Dam Oa. Dam Oa, who the Kadam, very Oa, Kadam. It says the blood of the Chatas comes before the blood of the Oa, means it only comes before the blood of the Oa, but not the limbs of the Oa. The Gemara says, no, other Rabbim, Miseifa, from the concluding clause, it says, a very Oa, Kodam, Murichatas, the Varim of the Oa come before the Murim of the Chatas. The Murim Chatas is the Kadam, Dam Chatas, Kadam. It only comes before the Murim, but not the blood. You can't learn out from there. So the Gemara then says, the Balu. Dam Oa Murichatas, the reverse question. The two weaker ones, the Murim of the Chatas and the blood of the Oa, which one comes first? Ezem and Kodem. Do we say Dam Oa Kodem, that the blood of the Oa comes first, because it comes from an Oa which is entirely burnt? Or maybe the Murim comes first because it comes from the carbon that provides atonement. So again, the Gemara is going to try to learn from the Mishnah, but in the end, we'll conclude the Mishnah doesn't prove. Tashma dam chatas kodem dam oa. Dam chatas who the kodem dam oa. The blood of chatas comes before the blood of the oa, but doesn't that imply of a murah chatas low? But the murim were not. Adarabba, Gemara says miseifa. From the next cause, a very oa kodem a murah chatas. The verm of the oa come before the murim of the chatas. The very the coming on murah chatas. So dam oa. Doesn't that mean only the verm of the oa come first, but not the murim of but not the blood of the oa? So we can't learn out anything from this. Hold on 1 second. Here we go on. So the Gemara says, dam or the dam asham. Okay, so we said that the chatas comes before the asham. What about the blood of the oa coming before the blood of the asham? We said that the chatas comes before the asham, and the blood of the chatas comes before the blood of the oa. What about the blood of the oa and the blood of the asham? Ezem kodem. Do we say dam oa kodem? Not something called kalil, that the oa comes first because it's entirely burnt. Or dilma dam asham kodem in mechaper. Maybe the blood of the asham because it does provide atonement. Tashma dam chatas kodem dam oa. Well, the Mishnah says that the blood of chatas comes before the blood of the oa, but dam asham will, but the blood of the asham does not. So therefore, we see that the dam of the asham does not come before the oa. Mara says no, but dinu debayla misnei nam asham. Really, the blood of the asham could come first. Why does our Mishnah not say it? I did debayla misnei sefer because it wants to go straight to the next clause, which says the very oa kodem murichatas. The limbs of the oa come before the murim of the chatas, and so therefore. The Itanale Murei Asham, if it would have said that the limbs of the Oa come before, because if it was said they would come before the Murim of the Asham, then have a Mino Mura Asham who the Mino Mura Chata so coming. I would have thought the only comes before the Asham and not the Chata. So that's why it stays with the Chatas, but it's not really telling us about the Asham. So the Gemara gives another attempt. Tashma Chatas Kodem La Asham. Does the chatas come before the asham? Chatas would come before the asham of oa. Doesn't that mean only the chatas comes before the asham, but not the oa? My lavin that they're referring to the dam of the oa does not come before the dam of the asham. No, that's referring to the imurim. The imurim of the asham did not come before the imurim of the oa or the avarim of the oa. Dekanami dekatani mimnesha dama nitem, because it says because the blood of the chatas is applied on all four corners. So that means that we're referring to blood. That's the context of it. So that's the shedamanitain. Excuse me. That proves that we're referring to not the dam, but to the murim, and so that proves that we're referring to the murim, and so therefore we see from here to answer that question that the chatas comes before the asham, but the oa. Hold on 1 second. So we see from here that when it says the chatas comes before the asham, it's not talking about the blood, but the imurim. If it was talking about the blood, it wouldn't have said chatas kodemes asham nature damanisin. So the chatas comes before the asham because it's applied. So therefore, it's speaking about the blood. So this proves that the blood of the Ola, it seems to imply that the blood of the Ola comes before the Asham. And so therefore, but the Rambam rules that you can bring whichever one you want. The blood of the Ola, the blood of the Asham, it's not Machriya. Because the Rambam doesn't have this language taken nami. According to the Rambam, the Gemara remains in its suffix. But the Lechem Mishnah says that okay, anyway, but it's all discussion. How do we pass in here? Because it seems from the Gemara that we were saying that the blood of the Ola does come first, but the Rambam doesn't pass like that. Hold on. Okay, so up to the next piece. The Gemara says, Chatas, Kodemes, the Chatas comes before the Asham because its blood is applied on all four corners. Other Rabbi, Asham Kadim, the Asham come first. King Yeshlo Kitzvah, the Asham is the only carbon with a fixed price. It has to be a minimum of 2 slime. I feel lucky, reboy the Mizbeach. No, the fact that the Chatas has 4 on the altar, that's a higher level. Asham Kodim with Toda. Adarabba, Toda, the Isle Nazir coming. The Toda and the Isle of the Nazir should come first. Came to and Lechem because they both require bread, unlike the Asham. No, the fact that the Asham is Kachi Kachim, that's higher level. Toda the El Nazir, that the Toda and the El Nazir, they come before the Shlomim because they're in for one day and they require bread. Adarabba, Shlomim coming, Shekin Yeshna Mitzvah could be Yachad. The Shlomim should come first to ask the Gemara because the Shlomim is a communal offering and an individual offering. The Gemara says, whatever's in for one day is stronger. Ibailu, Toda ve'el Nazir, when we have the carbon Toda and the El Nazir, is a man Kodem. The Toda and the El Nazir, which one comes first? Toda Kadma. The Toda comes first, Shekin Tu'una, Dalan Mine Lechem. Do we say the Toda comes first because we have 4 types of bread? Or Dilma El Nazir, Kodem Shekin Yeshimo Dam Machirim. Because you bring the other carbonos with it. Because in addition to the El Nadir, which is the Shlomim, you bring the Chatas and the Ola. So which one should come first? So the Gemara says, Hashman, Zuko Demes, Zusha, Zuta, Tuuna Dal Mini Lechem. Vizu Eina, Tuuna El Shnei Mini Lechem. The Toda comes first because it has 4 loaves of bread and the El Nazir only has 2. A Shlomim Kodmin LeBechor. The Shlomim comes before the Bechor. Adarabba, just the opposite. The Bechor should come first. Kodem Shekin Kedushat Rechem. It's holy from the womb. V'nechol Kohanim, and it's eaten by the Kohanim. Afilu Achi Mitzvah Yisera Sadifa. No, nevertheless, we're going to say that the Shlomim comes before the Bechor because it has all these other mitzvahs associated with it. One of the mitzvahs that are associated with the Shlomim, it has the 4 applications of the blood, the Nesachim, the Tenufas Chaz of the Shok. There's all these different aspects, and so therefore comes first. HaBechor Kodem L'Maiser. The Bechor comes before the Maiser because it's holy from the birth and it's eaten by the Kohanim. Adarabba Maiser Kodem. The Maiser should come first. Shekim Mekadesh L'Fanav L'Acharav. Because if you accidentally call the 9th one the 10th, or the 10th one, or the 11th one the 10th, then we're going to say under those circumstances, they also become holy. So we see from here that the Meiser has the ability to make whatever's before it and after it holy. So therefore, it should come first. Where it says, "I feel kedusha mirachem adifa." No, the Bechor is holier because it comes from the womb. Meiser kodem la'ofos. The Meiser should come before the birds because it is an animal offering and it has kachim kachim with the fact of its blood and its imurim. Adarabba, Ophos should be kadmi. He says the Gemara, the bird should come first. Shekin kachim kachim because they are considered kachim kachim. Meaning to say, even the meat of the oaf, which is eaten by the Kohanim, is Kachim. So I feel min zevach. No, an animal offering is greater. Amar Avina Bar Shila, a muri kachei kolem. So sheyatu ifnei zrikas dam to dam psum. So Avina Bar Shila says, let's say if the parts of the kachei kolem that are supposed to go up on the altar, but they went up before the blood was sprinkled, they become disqualified. V'tana tuna and neshu zevach v'yeshnu kachei kachim dama ve'murav. So, and the Tana taught, what's the reason? Because, quoting our Mishnah, that the reason why Meiser comes before the Ophos is because it's an animal and it's the Kache Kachim. And what are the Kache Kachim aspects of it? The Dam of an Emurav. So why does he say Dam of Emurav? Bishlama Emurin Leisnu Ophos. It makes sense why it says that the Meiser comes before the Ophos because it has a Murav, which the Chatas Oph doesn't. Bishlam Murlays the Mopus Aladami Isa, but the Chatas Oph doesn't have the blood sprinkled on the altar. So why do we refer to that? El Lav Kamash, when it's telling us Emuron Kidamo, isn't it teaching us this Chiddush that we just said? That the Emuron are like the blood. Ma Damo of Zrika, just like the blood is prior to the Zrika. Af Emurin. Also, with respect to the Emurin of the Meiser, Kodem Zrika, it's prior to the sprinkling. The Kakaru Kachi Kachim, and still the Emurim are called Kachi Kachim. Umadamo Mibsal Biyotze. And just like the blood is disqualified if it goes out of the courtyard, Afimurim Mibsal Biyotze. So also the Emurim, if they go out of the courtyard, are disqualified. Even though a Shlamim is allowed to go out of the courtyard, if the Emurim went out before the blood was sprinkled, it's disqualified. Gemara says, name a Messiah, let's bring a proof. Basar Kachi Kawim. So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish had an argument about the meat of kachikalim that went out before the zrikas tavim. Sheyatzov made zrikas tavim. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kasher, Reish Lakish Amar Pasul. Rabbi Yochanan says it's kosher because they're eventually allowed to go out. Reish Lakish says disqualified. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Kasher Hol v'Sofalatzis. In the end, they'll be allowed to go out anyway. Reish Lakish Amar Pasul Adayin L'Lagiyah Manor would say because it's still not yet the time to go out. Ad Kangol please Al Babasar. They're only arguing about the meat. I will be Murin. I will be Murin, but if it would be a case of a Murin, they wouldn't be arguing. Whoa! Also, Rabbi Yochanan would admit because the Murin are not eventually going to go out, that if they went out, they're disqualified. You said no. Who adin to be Murim nami puigi? No, it's possible. Rabbi Yochanan also argues by the Murin. Why? How the kamiflage bebasar? The only reason why they argue about the meat is odiel koko to Reish Lakish. Tell us that the strength of Reish Lakish, that full basar, they're still full of saints, even though the meat is eventually going to go out. It's still not yet ready to go out, and so therefore it's going to be disqualified. Let's say that this dispute between Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish is in the Chokas Tanaim, a Muri Kochikalim, Sheyatzov Nezrikas Tamim. Rabbi Lazar Omer that if they murmur the Kochikalim went out before the sprinkling of the blood. So Rabbi Lazar says, a molen band, there's no me'il on them, even after you sprinkle them, because even after you sprinkle the blood, because this rika will not establish it as a me'ila, because presumably they're disqualified. And you're not going to be liable for them if this carbon became pigol, nosar, or tame. You're not going to be liable if you eat them. And the reason is because these isurim only apply on a carbon whose blood was sprinkled properly, and these emurim were considered like they were not because they became disqualified for fayotze. So doesn't this teach us like the halacha of this is in accordance with the position of Ravina? Whereas Rabbi Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva says, so what's the dispute? Isn't the dispute where you then brought him back up? The Mar Savar, the Rabbi Lazar's other position, they were disqualified when they went out. Mar Savar will whereas Rabbi Akiva says they weren't disqualified. Amar Papa, no, but the Hadar Eilinu Kuliyamu. If you then brought him up, everybody would agree that it would help, and therefore there is Me'ilah. Now, like Ravina says, here they're only arguing about a case when they're still outside the temple, the courtyard. You haven't brought them back in Pligi. This is the dispute. Marsever Ein Zrika Moelas Liyotze. One says that the sprinkling of blood does not have any effect if they went out, even though they weren't disqualified yet. But since they went out, it doesn't have effect. Marsever Zrika Moelas Liyotze. Whereas Rabbi Kiva says it does have an effect. Where it says Rav Papu da Amar, the Sinu Avrai Kuliyamalo Pligi, but the Ailu Gavai Pligi. But doesn't Rav Papa say that nowhere it went outside? Everybody agrees that if they're still outside, there's no Me'ilah. Rav Papa taught that principle back in where did he teach this? He taught this in Menachos. So the Gemara says, yeah, Hani Mili B'Shtei Lechem, the Lav Gufei the Zivcha, that's only by the 2 loaves of bread, where they're not by the blood, they're not connected to the animal that's sprinkled. They're a carbon on their own, and so therefore, if they're chutz, the azara, at the time of the sprinkling, the zrika will not cause meal on them. Avoin murin the gufe the zivkahu b'the isno avraipli. But by the murim, which are the essence of the carbon, we still argue in those circumstances. Okay, this is today's daf yomi. We'll stop here. Baruch Hashem.